Good morning, everybody. Permit me to introduce myself. My name is Mike Ryan. I have the dubious current position of the Director of University Accreditation and Assessment at the University of Buffalo. In case I forget, I want to thank all of you for coming this morning. I'm very pleased to see representatives from so many other educational institutions in the area. I think it speaks to the relevance of the topic this morning. In your packets that you picked up when you came in this morning, there's a list of attendees, so there's opportunities for us to network with each other and contact one another at our respective institutions. There's other information Paul Wittig will speak about in terms of other events that will be following the seminar this morning. As Jason mentioned, it's time for Q&A. We have some microphones positioned in the aisles, so if you would please come forward and ask your question, and we'll try as best to respond to it. So anyone has questions? And if you prefer, if you're more comfortable bellowing them out, Jason will repeat the question and respond accordingly. Any questions for Jason?
Well, certainly what you and your department is doing is building a curriculum map, which is very common practice when you're starting to talk about program level assessment. And what usually happens is you build a chart that has a list of the courses, numbers or names, and then the list of the outcomes. What you all have done is operationalize it a little differently. But rather than saying this specific assignment at this level, you've said this class has this level of sophistication to it. Students who are passing with a certain average are demonstrating mastery at that level and moving on. That's certainly, yeah, that's going to go. That's owning that process. I think most departments probably wouldn't go that way simply because it takes a lot of conversation to get to what are you doing in your classes at what level. I would assume that as students go from the beginning to the end, you see a Bloom's taxonomy getting sort of more and more sophisticated. That would be an assumption. Maybe not. Excuse me. Yeah, the assessment people I know who would have a problem with it, not me, but the people I know who would have a problem with it would say a system like that is it's walking dangerously close to the idea of inputs as opposed to outcomes. And what used to happen is they used to talk, and I'm not saying it, they would say it, that people used to build curriculum maps a decade ago when they were sort of talking about assessment, and they'd say, here are all the topics that are covered in this course, and then this course, and then this course, and then this course. And everyone would say, well, that's great, but just because you're covering them doesn't mean that students are learning them. You know, just because you're sitting there talking about some theory doesn't mean anybody's learning about that theory. And the big criticism back then was it was all input-driven. You've walked away from that by saying, well, no, there's a performative element to it. That performative element is the whole score for that student's performance across a semester. So yeah, that's curriculum mapping coupled with an interesting way of looking at how you're going to talk about student performance across the whole program. So yeah. Two very different things. I'm going to turn to your colleagues on this one first. The question is, learning is a multifaceted thing. It is not a singular thing. So it's not sometimes just about concept acquisition or learning how to do a specific technique or practice. Sometimes it's about changing attitudes. Education theorists is, what is it? Knowledge, dispositions. So it's a dispositional change. Or something like critical thinking. Are there any particularly strong practices that you all have seen or things that you do in your field or your discipline to help with that? Not necessarily assessing it, but actually doing it. Values inventories. Oh, where's Diane? Social work. Dispositions are critical, not just as people, but to your work. You need to approach your work with a certain openness, empathy, and understanding that we'd like to see every field have, but not every field needs it the same way. Yeah, coursework's a lot about exposing them to models. And modeling learning is critical, but then once they're actually out in the field doing it, they need to exhibit those behaviors. And I would assume that the social work program here, much like everywhere else, if there is a student who is not exhibiting them, and heaven forfend exhibiting negative behaviors, there's an intervention, there's a conversation, there's talk about that. Yeah, there's nothing like the real world for testing where you are. It's very easy for me to say what my values are. It's very difficult to always live up to them when I'm faced with threatening or different situations. I think that activity itself is a fabulous assessment, not only in terms of the students themselves tracking their change over time, but being able to come back, document that change, and match it up against what the professor is talking about vis-a-vis the research. This wasn't just you popping off with some thought. This was, the research indicates not only that there is a difference, but that the patterns exhibit the following characteristics. The student can go out and look not only that there's a difference, but that those characteristics were exhibited.
I'd like to take the opportunity myself to thank Vice Provost Lucinda Findley and the director of our Teaching and Learning Center, Paul Wittig, for organizing and theming this year's Gentiles Conference around this important topic. So I want to express my thanks to them. And I would like to ask Paul Wittig to come up. We have a small token for Jason, and I'm very appreciative of his providing us with a very informative and entertaining talk this morning on this topic. So Jason, thank you very much. Paul.
The young man in the candy shop. While Jason is doing that, I'd like to acknowledge Ron and Kay Gentile for sponsoring this lectureship this morning, and my thank you to Mike for supporting our efforts here today. Appreciate that. Also, yes, thank you, Jason. Acknowledge the support that we received from Bruce Pittman from the College of Arts and Sciences, Lynn Kozlowski from Public Health, Marcia Lewis and Wayne Anderson from Pharmacy. Jerry, thank you very much for participating in the cameo section, along with Kathleen. I saw you here earlier today. There you are. Thanks, Kathleen. So one last piece that I want to add is that the TLC is in the process and is in implementing wraparound workshops to support various aspects of Jason's presentation. So if you go to the TLC website, you will see a variety of workshops that we are going to be sponsoring this year and ongoing in the area of assessment. So I come over here to see Jason, okay. We have some Mountain Dew.
Pint, so, and it's empty, not for long.
Okay. Once again, thank you everybody for coming today, and thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed.